There's a place in the Middle East that's been at the centre of trade, culture, and power for thousands of years. You've seen it in headlines. But the full story, that's something most people never hear. That's right. I'm talking about Syria, a country that sits at the crossroads of continents and where ancient civilizations began. So, in this video, we're diving deep into the roots of how this country came to be, covering topics like its history, geography, economy, and of course culture. Long before modern borders, before maps, even before most written records, there was Syria, because 700,000 years ago, early humans were already calling this land home. And by around 3000 BC, the city of Ebla was one of the oldest known civilizations ever discovered. Over time, Syria became the world's crossroads, and with that came the world's powers: Sumerians, Akkadians, Egyptians, Hittites, Babylonians, Persians. They all fought over this land, and they all left their mark. There were powerful kingdoms like Ugarit, famous battles like Kadesh, and even peace treaties that would shape how diplomacy worked in the ancient world. Then came the Persians, then Alexander the Great, and after him, the Romans, who turned Syria into one of their prized provinces. And here's a wild fact: Syria pops up a lot in the Bible. Damascus in particular is where the Apostle Paul had his life-changing vision on the road to conversion. After the Roman Empire split in two, Syria became part of the Byzantine Empire until the 600s, when something big happened. Because in 636 AD, Arab Muslim armies defeated the Byzantines at the Battle of Yarmouk, and Islam spread rapidly through the region. Damascus became the capital of the entire Islamic Empire under the Umayyads. And for a time, Syria was the heart of the Muslim world. But when the Abbasids moved the capital to Baghdad, Syria's influence faded. Power changed hands again and again. Egyptians, Crusaders, Kurds under Saladin, Mongols, Mamluks. Then, by 1516, the Ottoman Empire swept in and held Syria for over 400 years. Compared to what came before, this was actually a relatively stable time. But it wouldn't last forever, because in the early 1900s, World War I changed everything. As the Ottoman Empire crumbled, the French and British were already making secret deals behind closed doors to divide up the region. In 1920, Syria became a French mandate, and just like that, 400 years of Ottoman rule ended. But the Syrians weren't exactly thrilled about foreign rule. The Great Syrian Revolt broke out in the mid-1920s. Uprisings, crackdowns, and protests continued through the years. Finally, in 1946, right after World War II, France pulled out, and Syria became fully independent. But the years that followed were chaotic. I'm talking military coups, short-lived unions like the United Arab Republic with Egypt, and multiple changes in leadership. By 1963, the Ba'ath Party seized power. Then, in 1970, a man named Hafez al-Assad took control in a military coup. And that's when modern Syria really took shape. For 30 years, Assad ruled Syria with an iron fist. He built up the military, aligned with the Soviet Union, clashed with Israel, and sent troops into Lebanon. In 1982, when the Muslim Brotherhood staged a rebellion in the city of Hama, Assad's forces responded brutally. The result? Thousands were killed in what became one of the deadliest crackdowns in Syrian history. In 2000, Hafez died, so his son Bashar al-Assad took over. At first, there was hope for change. He released political prisoners and people thought things might loosen up. But the repression came back fast. By 2011, inspired by the Arab Spring, protests broke out across the country. Teenagers arrested for graffiti. Peaceful demonstrators were shot down, and families disappeared, which ultimately sparked one of the deadliest civil wars of the 21st century. In just a few months, protests turned into rebellion, and the Free Syrian Army was formed. Rebels seized territory. The Assad regime cracked down harder. Then it got even messier. Because terrorist groups like ISIS moved in. World powers picked sides. Iran and Russia backed Assad. The US supported rebels. Chemical weapons were used. Airstrikes rained down. Cities were destroyed. Over 600,000 people were killed, while millions were displaced. And for over a decade, Syria became the world's biggest humanitarian crisis. Then in 2024, something no one expected happened. A fast-moving rebel offensive, led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, swept through the country. Damascus fell. And finally, after nearly 25 years in power, Bashar al-Assad was ousted. So you're probably wondering, why does Syria always seem to be in the middle of everything? Well, that's because it literally is. If you look at a map, Syria sits right in the heart of the Middle East. It's bordered by Turkey to the north, Iraq to the east, Jordan to the south, and Lebanon and Israel to the southwest. But Syria isn't just desert and ruins because its geography is surprisingly diverse. And here's what I mean. Along the coast, the land shifts between sandy bays and rocky cliffs. Then, north of Tartus, the terrain changes fast as the al-Ansariya mountains rise sharply, squeezing the coastline between land and sea. This mountain range stretches from north to south, peaking at over 5,000 feet, or about 1,500 meters near Latakia, before gradually tapering off to the south. Just east of these mountains lies the Gab Depression, a long fertile valley carved by the Orontes River, one of Syria's key waterways after the Euphrates. Farther south, along the border with Lebanon, the landscape climbs again into the anti-Lebanon mountains. Here you'll find Mount Hermon, Syria's tallest peak, reaching over 9,200 feet, or just about 2,800 meters. Head east and the scenery shifts quickly. The mountains give way to the vast Syrian desert, which is a huge stretch of rocky plains that covers much of the country. But don't picture waves of golden sand like in a movie. This desert is mostly rock and gravel, with scattered hills and flat plateaus. It's dry, open and tough, with very little natural tree cover. One area, called al-Hamad, is especially remote. It's so barren that barely anything grows there. Which begs the question, what's the weather in Syria like? Well, along the coast, the weather cycles between hot, dry summers and mild, rainy winters. Summer temperatures usually hover in the 80s Fahrenheit, or around 27 to 32 degrees Celsius, while winter drops to the low 50s, which is about 10 to 12 degrees Celsius. But inland, it's much more extreme. In cities like Damascus and Aleppo, summer highs often climb into the 90s, which ranges 33 to 37 degrees Celsius, while winter nights dip into the 30s and 40s, almost 1 to 4 degrees Celsius. And yes, it does snow in Syria, especially in the mountains and inland areas during winter. And once or twice a year, Kamsin winds sweep through, hot, dusty gusts that turn the sky orange and fill the air with grit. Despite the dry climate, Syria supports a surprising range of plants. On the mountainsides, you'll find fir, yew, and lime trees. Coastal regions are perfect for citrus. In the Euphrates Valley, date palms thrive, while across the country you'll see olives, grapes, apricots, wheat, and barley. You'll also find useful wild plants like sumac, which adds tang to food, licorice root used in medicine, and mulberry trees, which are essential for silk production. And for a few short weeks each spring, just before the summer heat kicks in, the land bursts into colour with wildflowers and grasses. Besides flora, Syria still has a variety of fauna, especially in its more remote regions. In the mountains and forests you might find wolves, foxes, jackals, hyenas, wild boars, and even a few bears. The deserts are home to gazelles and jerboas, which are tiny, hopping rodents that are mostly active at night. Birds of prey like eagles and falcons soar above the hills, especially near cliffs and mountain passes. Reptiles are common too, with vipers, chameleons, and lizards, all making their home in the hot lowlands. And during summer, mosquitoes and sandflies are hard to avoid. In rural Syria, animals are part of everyday life. Mules help carry loads in the mountains. Camels are used to cross desert plains. And in villages across the country, families raise cows, sheep, goats, donkeys, horses, and chickens. These animals aren't just part of the economy, they're part of the rhythm of daily life. Speaking of the economy, this is what Syria's facing right now. Before the war, Syria had a growing economy with strong ties to its neighbours. But today, it's a shadow of what it used to be. The World Bank estimates Syria's economy is worth about $21 billion. That's roughly the same as Albania or Armenia, except those countries each have around 20 million fewer people. So, to put it in perspective, between 2010 and 2022, Syria's economy shrank by more than half. And some experts think it's actually worse than that. One clue: satellite images of nighttime lights. The dimmer the lights, the weaker the economy. And by 2024, those lights had dropped so much, it pointed to an 83% collapse in activity. That's almost like hitting rewind on decades of development. Today, more than 90% of its people, or nearly 25 million, live below the poverty line, according to the UN. That means even basic things like food, medicine, and fuel are out of reach for most families. A big part of the problem is the Syrian pound. Back in 2011, it was around £47 to $1. Now it's over £11,000 to the dollar at the official rate, and even more on the black market. In fact, at one point in 2023, it hit $22,000 to the dollar. A lot of this started in 2019, when neighbouring Lebanon went into its own financial crisis. That crash sent shockwaves through Syria's economy, making it even harder to get foreign currency, import goods, or pay debts. Then, in late 2023, Syria appointed its first ever female central bank governor, Maysa Sabrine. She promised to clean up the exchange rate mess and stabilise the currency. But with so many pressures, it's an uphill battle. As for Syria's national debt, officially the government says it owes between $20 to $23 billion, mostly from loans with other countries. But unofficial estimates say it could be closer to $30 to $50 billion. And while Syria has started rebuilding ties with other Arab nations, the deep economic crisis and lack of real reform means everyday life for Syrians remains incredibly hard. But as you'll see in a minute, there's more to the story than just their economic hardships. Because to truly get a feel for the country, you have to step inside their homes, hear their music, taste their food, and see how they celebrate life. In other words, you have to explore the culture. And one thing's for sure, family life is everything here. Whether you're in a small mountain village or the middle of bustling Damascus, you'll find families gathering often, sharing meals, stories, and lots of laughter. It's common for relatives to live close by and drop in unannounced, especially for lunch or tea. That's because hospitality is a way of life. That warmth extends beyond the family too. Neighbours often act like extended relatives, and friendships between people of different religions or backgrounds are a normal part of daily life in Syria's cities. Since we're on the subject of diversity, let's talk about it. Because while the majority of Syrians are Arab, the country is also home to Kurds, Armenians, Assyrians, and smaller groups like Circassians and Turkmens. Each group brings its own language, music, clothing, and customs, adding layers to Syria's identity. Arabic is the official language, but you'll hear Kurdish in the north, Armenian in Aleppo, and Aramaic, the ancient language once spoken by Jesus, in a few mountain villages. Besides this, religion is also a big part of their culture. Syria is mostly Muslim, with both Sunni and Shia communities, but there are also Christians, Druze, and other religious minorities. And you'll see this reflected in Syria's daily rhythm, like shops closing during prayer times, or streets coming alive during Ramadan nights. Then, in markets, you'll find everything from blown glass to traditional instruments like the oud and kanun. Music and folk dancing are key parts of celebrations, and it's not unusual for weddings or festivals to turn into full-blown dance parties. Speaking of festivals, Syria celebrates a range of religious and cultural holidays. Muslims celebrate Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha, while Nowruz, the Persian New Year, is observed by Kurdish and other communities. These celebrations often involve big family gatherings, feasts, and lots of sweets. Which brings us to the food. Syrian cuisine is a flavourful blend of Middle Eastern and Mediterranean influences. Think sizzling kebabs, creamy hummus, warm flatbreads, crispy falafel, and pastries stuffed with cheese, meat, or nuts. Spices like sumac, cinnamon, and allspice give Syrian dishes their signature kick. And wherever you go, expect to be offered a hot glass of tea. It's practically a welcome mat in liquid form. So, knowing what you know now, does Syria's past change how you see its present, or maybe even its future? Also, what do you hope to see in Syria's future in the next couple of years? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always, if you loved this video, you'll enjoy this next video.